it going? Susan Ruth here. Thanks for listening to another episode of Hey Human Podcast. This is episode 206. I recorded this a couple months ago. The lovely John Penney came over. John Penney is a filmmaker, director, award-winning screenwriter, producer. He and a partner make delicious wine. Very interesting guy. Teaches directing at the Los Angeles Film School. He's done films like The Kindred and Return of the Living Dead 3. He wrote a book called Truck Stop. The list of accolades for him is quite long and would take up way too much time to go over them. So, of course, I'll put links on the links page at heyhumanpodcast.com. But I'm very excited for you to hear this conversation. John is a lovely man. Really, really enjoyed our talk. And yeah, excited for you to hear it. In other news, I signed up along with my roommate, Jen. We chipped in and signed up for the 2-for-1 on Masterclass. Oh my gosh, it's great. This is not an ad, by the way, because I don't do ads, but holy moly, it's great. So far, we've watched the Steve Martin one, the RuPaul one, the Aaron Sorkin one, mind blown, and then advertising one, Goodby, and what's the last name of the other guy? Oh, it escapes. I know it's something Steen. Is it Silverstein? Goodby and Silverstein? I think that's right. Anyway, fantastic. Wow, there's so many shows on there that I want to watch. I'm very excited. Hey Human Podcast is on Instagram and Facebook. My personal Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter is Susan Ruthism, if you want to check those out. You can email me, susan@heyhumanpodcast.com. If you want to check out my art or music or anything like that, go to susanruth.com. And rate and review Hey Human on iTunes or wherever you listen to your podcast. Super duper helpful. I know it takes time. It's probably taking like 5 minutes or something. And I know that we've all got stuff going on, but if you can take a moment to review and rate the show, please do that. I think I said the email thing, susan@heyhumanpodcast.com. I mentioned the links page. Every episode gets its own links section on the heyhumanpodcast.com. I curate it every week. It's got lots of stuff. This one is no different, so definitely go check that out. Things about John and his movies and books and information and all this stuff. So, okay, that's it. Thanks for listening. Stay safe. Big love. And here we go. I have not read all the Shakespeare yet.
Actually, keep your books.
I love books. When I made my first record, I sold most of my book collection in order to pay for it.
Jiminy.
And then it just took time. Look at that.
I had this book. Wow.
You did?
Yep.
I love quote books.
So funny.
They make me very happy.
I won't have
Songwriters have lots of this
anymore.
Really?
Sad. Yeah, it's
I'm
sad.
surprised. You were raised by literary...
No, I know. I keep the family books are in a little section.
Oh, okay.
Not that I ever read them.
Cheers.
Cheers.
John Penney.
Yes.
Ding. Welcome to Hey Human. Thanks for bringing over the wine.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Not just any wine.
Wine.
See how we started this already? We've already begun. You make wine.
I do. Realistic. Actually, my brother-in-law is the winemaker. But I make it up in Carmel Valley. We make about 2 tons a year, which is about 5 barrels. But we don't really sell it. This is just for
friends and family.
Friends and family, and I have a lot of fans actually around the world. I know that sounds pretentious, but I have fans in Italy and
wine
France.
Friends or film friends? Fans.
Wine fans.
Wine fans.
Who actually have had this wine. I was embarrassed. I didn't think it would translate, but it did, which was great. So I have, of course, I made a movie in Thailand, and I met a lot of people in Asia, and they always come to LA and want wine. So a lot of fans, which makes it nice because I give it away, and I've done some charity work where it's a group called Artists for Change, and we do sort of get-togethers, and then we auction wine and stuff.
That's fun. What does Artists for Change do?
Artists for Change is I'm actually on the board of advisors on that organization. It's about human trafficking.
Oh, wow.
And Julia Verdon runs it. And Julia and I had done about 5 or 6 movies back in the 90s together, so we were very good friends. Do you know Julia?
When that night, that Christmas party,
I
met her.
That's
Lovely
correct.
woman.
With Jason. That's absolutely right. Yeah.
I think we all danced on the dance
Yes,
floor.
we did.
We cut a rug.
Yeah. So Julia made a movie actually called, I want to get this right, Lost Girls, I think it's
I've
called.
seen it.
Yeah. It was a short, and then now it's a feature. You saw that film?
I did, because I had people on the podcast that are involved with stopping human trafficking in Tennessee, which is a huge gateway, sadly. Atlanta and Tennessee, Georgia and Tennessee. So I watched a bunch of documentaries and movies about it, and I saw that one. Very intense.
So she's finished the feature version of it, but that's part of what she's all about. And so she started this organization, Artists for Change, and we have these salons where we get together and auction things in sort of a casual kind of afternoon. If you ever need
a painting donated, I am happy to donate a painting that I've done. Yeah.
Definitely. Everyone sort of pitches in like that.
It's important.
Yeah, no, and then people like Elizabeth Hurley have come by and shown their support, and she's an old friend of Julia's. But it's great. It's and Houston, the actor Houston, was also there.
I don't think do I know who that is?
Yeah, you know who it is.
Okay.
I'm embarrassed to say his first name is slipping my mind. But anyway.
John?
That would be his father. Yeah.
So who's the child? Oh, John Huston probably isn't alive anymore.
No.
Angelica is the daughter.
That's right, and this is the son.
And the other, okay. Whose name also slips my mind.
Yeah, it's terrible.
Angelica, wow, what a beautiful woman.
Yeah.
Holy moly. I saw some pictures of her from way back. Back in when she was the beginning of dating Jack Nicholson era. I guess would that have been the 70s?
Yeah, something like that, yeah.
She was a stunner.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So Artists for Change.
Cool.
Yes, I'm involved. It's a very small world, as you know. So once you've been around here for a while, you start connecting. The connections become shorter.
And we met at a Christmas party.
That's correct.
And when I met you, I thought, I've known this person a very long time. You know how that is when you meet people? And
yeah, it's interesting.
It is interesting.
Yeah,
I love
Old Souls or something, maybe. Something like that.
Something.
But Artists for Change is great, so support it. Go out there, and my wine you can bid on there at the...
and it's quite good.
Yes.
It really is. You give me a hard time because of one time. But I do like it very much. What is
this is a 2016. And the one that's still a little young that needs to open up in the glass a bit more is the 17, which I'll
never live down.
Which you pointed out perfectly, yes. Yeah. No, it's all good.
I'm an asshole.
No.
You asked. I'm very truthful.
No, I certainly found that out the hard way.
Very honest.
I'm kidding. It's all good. It's all good. No, so that's the winemaking stuff. We do that.
What brought you into it? I know you said your brother-in-law.
Well, my brother-in-law had been making it since 1987, and he actually had opened a winery. He did the first year at a winery called Stack Stone in Paso Robles, and they got gold medals and really amazing stuff. And I said for years, like, God, I kept borrowing the wine. Can I, as a family member, extended family member, you're kind of always trying to get the wine. Finally, in 2004, I think it was 2004, I said, listen, can I just buy in as a partner? And they said, yeah. And then we had to expand the production. So now it's, like I say, 2 tons a year, 120 cases is what we produce.
Now, that does seem quite small. What would a normal winery is?
Well, these days, there's normal winery is kind of, there's not a normal winery. There's the big corporations, and then there's a lot of these cult wineries and smaller operations that are going on, and everything in between. So there are people doing cult wines that is smaller than what I'm doing. So it's the fact that we do the full-on winemaking. We're not doing it in a garage in a stainless steel tank. We're getting 80% neutral oak and 20% new oak French, aging it for 18 months minimum, which is really, really important to make the whole wine work. You can't shortcut that time because it gets some micro-oxygenation, if I said that right, into the chemistry of the wine. So
did you know a lot about wine before going into
I tried to learn a lot about it, but what sort of clicked in my mind, because I'm a very visual person, is going through the process of making it. I was able to see and taste where these different elements of wine actually come from.
Where do you get your grapes then?
We get our grapes every year from east end of Carmel Valley. It's Arroyo Seco appellation.
Oh, that's the area that you get them from. Okay, that's not just where... Is that where the winery is?
No, yeah, we're further west in Carmel Valley,
it.
Kashawa technically, but it's Carmel Valley, and so I have good friends that have been growing wine since for 150 years. They've been doing grapes. They didn't start doing grapes, but they segued in, and we always get this row and this row every year from them, and they've been very good to us. So generally, we do a Syrah Grenache blend, or in the case of the 17, a Petite Syrah Grenache. The one I have today here, the 16, is a Syrah Grenache blend.
That's lovely.
No,
yeah.
We started.
The color is really beautiful.
Yeah, it's got some darkness there.
That is the one thing of not having a visual podcast, that people don't get to see the intricacies of visual.
You're going to just have to go to video soon.
Oh, God.
Do it to YouTube.
That sounds like a nightmare. I'm sure it's wonderful, but I'm a one-woman show, so that's a lot of work. Yeah.
With 2 microphones, though.
I know.
That's impressive.
That's right. If one's good, then 2 must be really
it's twice as good. Yeah.
That's right. Where did you begin? Where were you growing up?
I was born in Carmel.
Oh, you were?
Yeah, in the hospital when it used to be in the city limits. They've moved the hospital up to a place called Community Hospital, Chomps, which is between Carmel and... Yeah.
It's a scary
Community
name for a
Hospital of Monterey Peninsula. Chomps is a short. So they moved the hospital after I was born out of Carmel, which was it was on Highway 1, and then it turned into a convalescent home, and I thought, wow, that's going to be great, because I can go back to the same building I was born in.
You may return.
And then, sadly, it's no longer a convalescent home, so I missed that window.
Oh, well.
Maybe for good. But anyway, so yeah, born in Carmel, grew up there from, I don't know, till I was about 5 or so, and then my parents split apart,
and you come from famous livestock, right?
Well, of course they were famous. Yeah, right. It's in that circle you think that, and then you get outside of this literary circle, and people don't know who writes what science fiction book, and they don't know.
Especially science fiction, because that's a really particular taste.
Yeah, and it's kind of like in that bubble, it seems like, oh my God, everyone must know this person, and then you step out, and there's a big world out there. Mm-hmm. So yeah, within the field of science fiction, my stepfather, who was my mother married, my biological mother married, was a guy named Ward Moore, and he was friends with Harlan Ellison and Ray Bradbury. They lived together in Topanga briefly, and my mother ended up marrying him, and so my mother was a novelist. She was a journalist. My biological father in journalism, writing in newspapers, and then she went off to be a fiction writer, and thought that the best way of doing that would be to sort of put herself in alignment with somebody in that field, I guess. I don't know. I'm not casting judgment here.
Sure. But when you said go off with, were you then with your dad, your biological dad?
No, they took us. My mother said, "Hey, listen, we're going on an adventure. Come, get in the car." And so we got in the car, and we drove across town, and we didn't know what was going on. And I was the youngest. I was like 5 years old. So we're playing. I don't know what's happening. In cinematic terms, we cut to my father coming home from work, right? Opens the door, everybody's gone.
Holy shit. So it was a way in the night kind of thing, but during the day.
During the day. Had no idea where we were, had no idea what happened to us. And He's desperate, going out of his mind, and would get phone calls that were threatening to him. If you try finding him, blah, blah, blah.
So your biological father would get phone calls from the stepfather?
We don't know who it was who was doing it.
Saying if you try and find
leave him alone, Anyway, this is just the beginning.
That is cinematic.
You don't want to hear this whole story.
No, I do. I'm so into it. Let's do it.
So eventually he finds out where we are and starts the court mechanisms rolling. And then immediately, again, in the middle of the night, we take off again. This time with Ward, my biological mother, and my two sisters. And we end up down in Redondo Beach at Ward's wife's house with his children.
What year is this?
This is 1965-ish.
Now, was Ward and did he and his wife have an open relationship, or was
I don't know what was going on.
Because you were 5.
Yeah. So we all lived together in Redondo Beach. And with
your mother, your siblings, Ward and his wife.
That's correct. And his children.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. And so we were there, and then once again, my father found out where we were and would show up as he's waiting to get the proper legal stuff together. He would show up like on Christmas. For example, this was a Jewish family I went into, and so there was we were just waspy kids, and so now we're in this very ethnic group area, which was fantastic, and I learned a lot and appreciate. But he would show up on Christmas morning, and out of the back of his car would hand us gifts, and then he'd go away. Finally, once he had found out where we were...
Sounds like a Robin Williams movie. It's so
true
good.
True story.
Wow.
Finally, and I'll answer the question why I haven't written this as a screenplay afterward.
Yes.
But anyway, finally, once he knew where we were, again, middle of the night, we take off once again. Now we're in a car driving across country, and we end up in a town called Osceola, Arkansas. Yeah. On the Mississippi River. And we spent months there. And it was a very strange chapter in my life. I was a little kid.
Was it with Ward and his wife as well?
No, his wife was gone. They ended up getting married. So I guess they divorced, married, moved on. So now we're on the banks of the Mississippi in this little town. I never had shoes the entire time I was there. I love that detail because people somehow think I'm making this Mark Twain shit up, but absolutely true. And, of course it was a very difficult time because you're dealing with a whole different culture, little kids who were smoking at 5. And I would come home and say, hey, they're rolling their own cigarette. Can I smoke too? It's like really crazy.
And your older siblings?
They went to the local school, but I wasn't in school. I was I just hung out all day, wandered around. The Mississippi flooded once. We had people going up and down the street in canoes because you couldn't drive. I mean, it was a whole new world out there. And we became friends with these people down the street. They were about our age. And one day they said, oh, hey, you guys want to come down and play? And we said, sure. So we all go down to play. We open the door, and there's my father is standing there with these 2 guys in black suits on either side of him. I'm a very visual person, and I always remember this. And my father got on his knees and opened his arms, and there was some sort of pull to him that I couldn't say to you. When you're a kid, that's a long time to be away from a parent. I knew who he was. I had no doubts about it. Ran to him. He hugged us. And one of my sisters got afraid, and I'm not going to say which one, but ran back to warn them. So they go, oh my God, he's got us. And they go to the sheriff. And the sheriff of the town says, here's the paperwork. They're legally being taken from you. And
so your mother.
They were taking, my father's taking us back.
Yeah.
So my other sister was collected. We had, like I say, I was wearing basically nothing. We go to a mall. He buys us, this stuff. We get on a plane. I'd never been on a plane before. We fly back. I'm saying, what is this weird world I'm in right now? Because I was just on the banks of the Mississippi with nothing. And then we ended up, he took us back to Carmel, back to the Monterey Peninsula. And that's when Did you ever hear of a movie called Kramer versus Kramer?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
I've seen the movie. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
It won like a million Oscars.
Yeah, well, ours was the story as if you had two parents who said, no, we want to drag the kids through that. We're going to we're going to go to court and we're going to fight for custody. And my mother lost, which says a lot about...
yeah, because generally women didn't.
In that era, it was very, very unusual. So for that to actually happen was pretty heavy at that time. So my father got custody of us, and we would have to visit every couple weeks. And then in the summer, I had to spend a summer with them. With the mama. Yeah,
with your mama.
And Ward, everyone in Greenwich Village, because they moved to New York, because that's where the literary scene was. And she became an editor of a magazine called Executive Housekeeper, of course, because Empower to Women. And she wrote a ton of stuff. In all fairness to her, all this hell she caused probably did well for her creatively. And when I asked her later about all this, she said, oh, just think of everything you'll be able to write about. And so I thought, well, thanks, Mom.
Classic.
Yeah, exactly. That's great. Yeah. So she ends up doing very well in her field and ends up publishing a book called Mock Orange by Scribner's. And she entered that world and did quite well. As a writer would do. I mean, not like a big name that you would hear anybody on the street, but she did fine. She did a lot of short stories and novels and so forth, one of which Ray Bradbury did an introduction for. So he was, like I say, an old family friend and would come up and visit us. So my father basically raised us until my glorious stepmother came into the picture and
your hot stepmom?
Yeah. Oh, stop. No, she was much younger than my father. Much younger and very pretty. Beautiful, beautiful woman.
How much older than you?
She was, let's see. God, that's a good question. I see her all the time. She's...
Now? Oh,
yeah.
Oh, wait, your father's passed.
Yeah, my father's passed, but she's remarried, I don't know, maybe, 20 years maybe? I don't know.
Not a lot, then.
Not a lot, no. I'm trying to, I get bad with ages. Anyway, so she's great. She's been very supportive along the way. And, that's my life. She basically raised me.
Interesting.
Yeah. So that's my life.
Did you, as an adult, question either parent about their choices other than your mother offhandedly saying you'll have stuff to write about?
Well, that's interesting because there was a period of time when I actually wanted to find out what was going on. And what I found out is that everyone has to create a world in which they're the protagonist. I'm putting it totally in literary terms, which fits the parties involved, I guess. But and because of that, the past somehow morphs a little bit. Right, you bend it. It's a little bit malleable when it comes to making your choices.
Well, memories are, period, right?
Yeah. So for her, I'm sure she did everything she thought was right. I tried to pin her down later. She did sort of disown me. I think I may have told you this crazy story. At one point in my life, she wrote me a letter, a note that says basically, I'm not her son. I know you've got a different life going on. And I thought, I don't know what was motivating this letter to write to me. But prior to that, we ended up writing some short stories together. They were published. So I was 16 years old when the first short story I wrote was published in the magazine of fantasy science fiction, which was a pretty prestigious magazine.
That's a big deal.
Yeah. 1975, I was 16 years old. And then we wrote another story together that won the Adelphi Academy Award, Adelphi Academy Literary Award in New York, which was very cool. So wrote 2 short stories with her, didn't write anything else. I think we wrote one more story that didn't get any traction, but I was always like a fountain of crazy ideas. People call me the shotgun when it comes to just coming up with idea after idea after idea, and I was always filled with them, but I never knew how to execute anything. I would just come up with great ideas. Well, I thought they were great ideas, and somehow that was a weird partnership that worked on a couple 3 stories. So I feel that, it's always a mixed blessing, I guess. On one hand, it was not the conventional way to grow up, to say the least. And on the other hand, I don't know where I would be if I wasn't, hadn't had some of that in my life. I don't know.
I'm curious, how do you think it would have been for you had you been raised up by your mom instead of your dad? If the tables had turned and she had...
Well, that's a really interesting question. She kind of... I think that for her, she never wanted to be a mother. That I got to take her side for a second. My father was a very traditional guy. You marry, you have kids, blah, blah, blah. You stay home, you take care of the kids. I'm going to keep working in the newspaper. And for a woman at that point, in time, it just wasn't... She was always very... ahead of her time mentally, I guess, with that kind of stuff and emotionally. So I look at it from her point of view, and I get it. I understand what she was up against, and I understand what you will do to realize your passion, your creative drive. I know that because believe me, my whole life was shaped by this. There was nothing else I was ever going to do. And so every choice I ever made didn't matter. It was all very clear to me what I needed to do. And sometimes, I wasn't married and then had that whole thing. But, you make choices in your life, and you just, creatively, that was very important to her, to become that, to follow that dream. I took a fair amount of, therapy later. And one of the things that was interesting was to talk to your mother at some point and find out what her parents were like. And she was the last one born. It was an accident. They didn't want her. And they basically didn't pay attention to her. So when you're in a situation like that, you have to become very self-reliant emotionally. And I also got a lot of that when I was going through the stuff that I went through. I also had to turn inward and find comfort and happiness by yourself, because you stop relying on other people. Now that could be looked at as a negative, or it could be looked at, hey, that's what you got to do to keep going.
Survival.
Yeah. And so I look at it from that point of view. Sure. I mean, what am I going to do? I tried to get her to open up once, and it was just started rattling off the same stuff that I knew wasn't true. And so I just said, you know what? That's fine. She can't see what I see. So
how many siblings?
Two sisters.
2 sisters.
I had a half sister from Ward who passed away.
Oh.
Yeah, sadly. Yeah, she had a aneurysm or something, and it was very sad. Yeah, and she had 2 kids. But this all started because you said, "What if I had stayed with my mother?"
Sure.
And my 2 nephews did, and it was a tough. They had a very stormy beginning as well.
Wait,
with
your
my
nephews?
half-sister.
Oh, interesting.
He was just here Sunday night playing at
your nephew?
Herb Alpert's club up on Beverly Glen. Have you been up there?
Mm-mm.
Amazing place.
Okay.
It is so cool.
Oh, wait a minute.
Jazz.
Yes, I have been there.
Vibrato.
I think that's where my best friend Ellen loves jazz. And when she came to visit, I think that's where we went.
That would be the place.
Right now she's going, "You're an idiot, Susan." I don't remember the name.
Well, the place is called Vibrato.
I think that's where we went, and it's very cool. It's a big dinner club.
Yep.
Yeah, that's where we went.
That's Vibrato.
Yeah.
So I'm very proud of Skylar, my nephew, because he still lives on the Monterey Peninsula, but gets these gigs because he's so well known.
Fantastic.
She
probably knows
really,
him.
really good.
What's his last name?
Skylar Campbell. He was just playing on Sunday night, like I say.
Grammy night.
Yeah. Well, maybe not so well known. I don't know. But anyway, so I'm proud of him.
2 sisters, my childhood was fascinating, to say the least. And I often say that my brothers were raised by different parents than I was raised by. Do you feel that's true about your sisters?
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I was the youngest, and my sisters were older.
Yeah, and so they their experience of your parents was
very much so. So different. during the trial, when we were over the custody battle, my older sister got up in front, took the stand.
Whoa.
Yeah. Heavy stuff, yeah. And showed photographs she had taken without people knowing, and yeah, it was pretty tough. So I think that of the 3, listen, I'm sure we're all screwed up. I'm just saying, of the three of us,
Totally.
I think that it was very difficult on my oldest sister.
Because she was old enough to understand what was going on.
She was right in the middle of it all.
Sure.
And she was put on the stand.
Photographs of parents doing things.
No, it's just how everything was
going
it was
down.
the crazy artist pad, right?
Yeah.
You know, with the God knows what was
Drugs
going on
and
at that
alcohol and
place.
naked people,
everything,
probably. Sure.
all that stuff.
Science fiction writers, man, they get down.
Hey, man.
I remember going to some with my parents because my mother, her family was very tied into the sci-fi world, as you and I have talked about. But so we would go to these parties and they're out there.
Yeah.
And I was, 7, 8 years old wandering around these crazy.
I remember one time we went camping with my mother up to Oregon, I think it was, and we just wandered out there, and everyone's naked, everyone's nude, and we're on the edge of the river, edge of Rogue River, and I'm like, is this normal? I don't know. So I just got in an inner tube and took off down the river. So, but it was a different era, as my mother liked to say. It was a different time. But yeah, no, it's, I forget what the question was, but it led me.
Being raised by different parents.
I just think that it would have been, I don't think I would have had the drive that I have, because my stepmother was a very driven person in business.
And she pushed you?
Yeah.
Were you close with your dad then during those years?
Extremely close. When my father died, it was probably the worst moment I've lived through at this point in my life.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, it was like I never knew, and then it was like this massive sledgehammer smashing me through my chest. I couldn't breathe. And I was...
Did he pass of cancer?
He had... It was complicated because when I was when I was about 10 years old, he had a aorta problem, and he went to Stanford to a guy named Dr. Shumway, and they put a new valve in him, and he had 3 of those during his life. It was to extend his life, and so that was driving my stepmother. Like, I graduated high school in 3 years. I went right on to the community college and then down to UCLA when I was 18. So I was pushed because she was afraid that, he wouldn't be around long. So you've got to, however that translated in her head, she pushed. Mm-hmm. And so I wouldn't have that drive if it wasn't for her. And you need it in this business. You need it a lot, So I give her a lot of credit for that.
Did you study film then at UCLA?
I was an English major, and but I took every critical studies. So I studied a lot of film, even though I came in out with an English degree. I took every critical studies class I could take and used it for the English major.
Had you already set a sight on filmmaking?
Absolutely. I did when I was about 10 years old. No, maybe about 10. I flipped the switch that I was going to make movies. Because in Carmel, I grew up around the business a little bit. The Bing Crosby Pro-Am, which was a golf tournament, would come to town every year. So I'd see all my favorite actors and everything. And Clint Eastwood was a local. And so I grew up on the peninsula and became obsessed. And my father would bring me everything from the newspaper home, DGA magazines that they would send, publications, and they would send television, all this fun stuff. So I was always constantly reading. And I had an old DGA magazine that was Clint Eastwood talking about directing a movie of his. And I read it so many times, like the pages were falling out. And then he came to town and he shot a movie called Eiger Sanction. And I think 75-ish, something like that. And I ditched school and followed the movie around all over Carmel and the peninsula. And sort of got my way onto a set in a small room and watched Eastwood direct a scene. And this was way pre 9/11, of course. No security. There's no security, and the crew kind of knew, this is that local kid who's been following us. No one stopped me. And so I just walked right in the set and watched him direct a scene. And it was just, it turned a light bulb on. I said, this is what I'm going to do. So I started doing a lot of short films and won some festivals there, local ones. And always knew that was what I was going to do at that point. So I said, well, I'm going to now have to go to UCLA Film School. And I applied, couldn't get in, grades, all that. So I just said, I'm going to go down, I'll be an English major. had a great time. Met a lot of great film students there that I'm still in touch with today. Yeah.
What was your first major film?
After graduating, the first thing I did was I started when I was in the film school. You as a crew, you do everything, right? Well, I really like the idea of lighting stuff because it's very visual, and and then they said, okay, you can work on the lighting crew, and I tried, and then the first thing I did was smash a light, and he said, hey, have you ever thought about editing? So I was moved to the editing room, which was fun, and I did sound effects on a movie called Pranks, The Dorm That Dripped Blood, and it was shot while we were at UCLA. And prior to that, I had gone off to do a job in the South Pacific as a sound man and a camera assistant, but that was just an open and closed job. This one began the actual feature journey, and we did this movie, and it was picked up and it was distributed across the country. And I said, wow, this is great. And so then we did another movie together. It was a group of us, and we did a movie called The Power, which also I have a story credit on that. So that's my first story credit. It was in the early 80s.
Meaning
maybe.
Then you helped develop the story itself?
Yeah, we all hashed out the story, and then somebody else wrote the actual dialogue and stuff in the screenplay version. So that was very exciting, and I went to, that got distributed all over the country as well. And I went to I'll never forget, because I do teach at the LA Film School now, and I always say, I'm going to teach you from people's mistakes. So I always include this one. When I grew up, my father and mother, everyone would say story is character and character is story, right? So I couldn't figure, it was like wash on, wash off, or whatever that is, wax on, wax off. I didn't even know what that meant. I had no idea. So I just knew it was a thing I was supposed to know what that meant. And then I was watching this movie, The Power, and people started booing and hissing and walking out of the theater. And I go, holy crap, it's because the protagonist isn't driving the story. Things are happening to her that she doesn't even believe, and the audience is way ahead of her because she wasn't driving the story. The story is character, and character is story. So every choice that character makes will push the story in any given direction. And it was like, out of that big failure, I said, holy crap, never again. So then we got together, and my first screenplay credit with this group was called The Kindred, and we worked, ultimately we made the movie. I was the screenwriter and a co-editor.
I've actually seen that movie.
Oh, well, there you go. With rubber creatures and all that.
It was like a tentacle board.
Yeah. So we, that one went all over the country as well, and theatrical. But it was really interesting because I was an editor and a writer on a movie, which is a highly unusual combination. But what it meant was I could see what I had intended, what we had intended to be, and then I see the actual footage coming out the other side. And I say, wait a minute, why didn't that idea get here? And you could say, well, that's not really filmable. The idea wasn't either something I could see or hear, so it didn't translate into, when you're shooting a movie, it strips so much away creatively that you really have to rely on anything you can see or hear. And so that was a big lesson for me. I said, wow. It informed how I write a screenplay. It really was a great example. A couple fun things about that movie was that I got to work with, my God, my mind is going to blank now. The guy who wrote Psycho, Joseph, I can't remember his last name.
You can Google it.
We'll look it up. Anyway, he was amazing.
I should know the answer to that because I love horror movies.
Yeah, but it's Stefano. Joseph Stefano.
Okay.
Sorry, it's the wine talking.
Sure.
No, Joseph Stefano came on to do a rewrite of all of the script that we had done. And he was so great because he would come visit, and he came in the editing rooms, and he was a much, much, much older guy. But for him to see that footage, he was like a little kid again. And I'm saying, oh my God, when I'm his age, I want to be that excited about movies and taking something you've written and seeing it realized, So that was really cool. And then plus, it was really weird. How do you rectify the fact that I've co-written a movie with Joe Stefano and I'm just some kid who's like barely 20 years old? You know what I mean? It was kind of odd in that regard. You felt a little like, you didn't really belong at the table, kind of. Anyway, so I finished that movie, and then I stopped editing. And I went on to write and sold a movie to Warner Brothers. And we had this, my friends Sam and John were connected to it as directors. And I thought, well, this is great, because now I'm in the studio system. And for about a year and a half, they paid us incredibly well. But there's never a chance they're going to make the movie, ever. Not a chance.
I've heard
because
that before.
It's called development hell, right?
Yeah.
So then it would go like, and then I sold a movie to Orion Pictures and a bunch of, so I was in that system for a while, and I got more and more discouraged because they weren't making the movies. They have these big, massive budgets to develop stuff, but it never actually gets into production. I'm not blaming him. It's just I would do the same thing.
I've heard this story a lot.
Yeah, you've got to grow a lot of stuff and pick the one that works solves the problem you're trying to solve. So that was very frustrating at a certain point. Then I get a call one afternoon. Now, one of the movies that I had been an assistant editor on was Return of the Living Dead, which was the Dan O'Bannon one with the Quigley dancing naked on the tombstone. I don't know. It's seared into a lot of horror fans' minds. Anyway, I hear a lot about it. But I had been an assistant editor on the first movie, and I thought that Dan O'Bannon, who wrote and directed that, brought a lot of really new and unusual things to the zombie genre. So I'm at home minding my own business, writing a spec thing. My agent calls and says, hey, they want to do part 3 of Return of the Living Dead. Do you want to go in and pitch something? I said, absolutely. Now, in my warped idea, because I had been an assistant editor, suddenly, of course, I deserved to write this script, right? Like somehow I was entitled. That was totally misguided. I went in, pitched, they picked my idea. I met Brian Usna, who's now a partner of mine in a company called Dark Arts Entertainment. But we got along really well. We made the movie. I had the time of my life. It was so much fun. They didn't care about what we were doing. They left us alone. We just went off and had a blast with this movie. And it turned out just what we had hoped it would be. And of all the movies I've been involved in, people constantly come up to me about that particular movie. I met a guy who has the lead character tattooed on his back. I mean, it really made an impression. And still does, Return of the Living Dead 3. But after that, I was a full-time writer. I wrote a movie for Avi Lerner, who has, I forget the name, which company has, New Image Films or something. He did all those Expendable movies. It was an action movie, time travel action movie. And then I started doing a bunch of HBO premiere movies in the 90s. And many, many of them. That's that whole part in my IMDb where he's like, I didn't know he was in that movie. What movie is that? I didn't. So we usually, would pull out name brand actors and put them in these action-packed movies for HBO. And I went around the world doing that. So I was into a lot of international co-production stuff. Excuse me.
Hydration.
And had a lot of fun. That's where I met Julia Verdon. She did the first one with Avi. She produced that. And then time came when my manager said, well, why don't you should direct, John. I said, yeah, man, I can screw up my script as good as the next guy. Because being a producer on these movies, it's not like you understand after a while what makes these changes, what happens. Let alone from a screenplay to the screen.
Explain for listeners the difference really between a producer and a director, because I don't know that people necessarily know what that is.
A director ultimately is the one on the set calling the shots. During production, he or she is the one who is deciding how to tell the story, deciding, which performance they want to tell the story. So it's really they're calling most of the shots, and they're more of in the film form, they really, depending on their background, what their emphasis is, they're going to really bring all everything from the script to the casting to the hair and makeup, and they're going to pull it all together and make sure everything in front of that camera is telling the story the way they envisioned it, right? A producer has a wider range of definitions. they can be the producing I did was very creative based. In other words, I would be attached to the scripts of mine before I sold them as a producer. And what that enabled me to do was to just say creatively involved, to keep that up.
Meaning if you're writing the screenplay and they want that screenplay, that they have to then include you in the production side.
Exactly.
Yeah,
in the producing side. Yeah. Which I only got that because I had really, really good director whisperer abilities where like I never threatened a director. I always knew where I belonged in the hierarchy because I'd been working on movies. So I knew that the writer, and in fact, it got a little awkward a couple times when Portia de Rossi, who was this actress at the time, she's now with Ellen DeGeneres, came out of her trailer and, "Hey, John, can I talk to you about this scene?" And I was like really nervous. Like, I knew you're not supposed to do that. But usually the writer isn't wandering around as a producer on the film. So that was an awkward one.
Which film was that?
That was called Perfect Assassins, I think, here. And then internationally it was called A Breed Apart. And it was with, who was that with? I forget. Oh, I'm trying to remember. Anyway.
Is that common? They changed the title of the film?
Yes.
Internationally?
Yes, definitely.
Why is that?
Depends on there could have been a movie in that country that was the same title. There could have been something that they don't think connects, culturally with people, so they'll change it. Mm. But anyway, so I did that movie, and then same thing happened when I was in Budapest with a movie with Natasha McElhone and William Hurt and RoboCop, Peter Weller. And the director was a very nice guy, Tony Hickox. Totally was fine. He said, "No, you can hang out. Don't worry about it. If they have a question for you, John, go for it." I said, "Okay, cool." So I was in Natasha McElhone's. I don't know if you know who she is. She's a beautiful, beautiful woman. And we were talking script stuff, and I come out of there, and then I hear, "Oh, William Hurt wants to see you now." It's like, then it was like, I don't know if it was uncomfortable, should I not? And so then I would go to William and talk stuff like that. I had already heard from Peter Weller. He had called me.
Hello, Peter Weller.
Yeah, he's a really talented guy. All of them. I've had the good fortune to work with so many talented actors.
There. Yeah, you are very lucky.
Between Steiger and Hurt, and who I've worked with twice, and the guy from I can't remember his name. Anyway, a lot of Academy Award actors and actors that are just really great. And what I think was my trick, for lack of a better word, was that I always wrote movies during that period of time with two good leads. Right? Because in budgets like that, you can get two actors of this certain value. Then suddenly it's like having an A-list actor. Not that none of my actors, they were always A-list, but you follow what I'm saying. They have this hierarchy thing. But so that was sort of what I did. I wrote two-handers, or whatever you want to call them, where there were two really strong, good characters that had good arcs, that it was clear what they wanted. It was clear what their struggle was, and this always drew in really, really good actors. So I was always proud of that.
Were you drawn to horror because you think your family's legacy, or do you think? Well, you talk about Ray Bradbury being a mentor, really, and that's that's astounding.
Yeah.
And for those of you listening, if you've never read Ray Bradbury, definitely in my top 10 writers of all time.
Oh, God, yes. No, he's a giant in the field.
No, but I mean, regardless of genre, I'm saying one of my top 10 of all time.
Yeah, for sure. No, that was really cool. She wrote a letter to Ray, or called him up.
Your mom?
Yeah, and said, "Hey, my son's moving down to L.A. Can you take him out, and give him words of advice, whatever?" And he said yes, and she sent me a letter, and I called him, and I went into Beverly Hills, and we had this big, long lunch where he talked to me, and he said, "So what do you want to do, John?" I said, "Well, I want to write movies." Now, I'm coming from a family of novelists and short story writers, so it was a little bit intimidating. I didn't see myself as that kind of writer at all. I just wanted to do movies and TV, which in that crowd was sort of not looked upon very highly. they were all about books and short stories, and TV and movies were just second rate.
Until he saw the check for Martian Chronicles could bring him.
Well, no, this is what my family message was.
Oh, your family message.
Yeah,
Ray Bradbury said that.
No, the opposite.
Yeah.
So, no.
So your family was saying, don't sell out.
Well, no, God, no. They weren't encouraging me to be a writer on any plane at all. They were too self-absorbed. But my feeling...
Do you want to borrow this book right here?
Oh, my God. Children of the Self-Absorbed. Oh, my God. It's hilarious.
We're in my library right now.
I know. That's really crazy. But anyway, no, I'm talking about my message in my head. Yeah. And so Ray said, what do you want to do? I said, well, I'm going to do movies. And he says, well, if you want to be a writer, don't write movies because there's too much between you and the audience. Start writing short stories. Do this. Now, I'm like, oh, God, I guess, oh, my God, Ray Bradbury's telling me not to, I don't know. So I ended up kind of continuing to write, but also editing more. And then 10 years later to the day that I had this conversation, he was shooting a movie on a stage, and I was shooting a movie I had written and produced on another stage. And the AD comes up and says, hey, John, Ray Bradbury's down there. I go, oh, my God. I go back down and say, hey, Ray, we talk. He tells me the same stories that he told me about my stepfather. He had seen my mother a lot in the back and forth between coming up to Monterey where they lived and back down here. We talked a lot about all that nonsense. And basically it was the same story over again. And finally I couldn't help it. I said, well, listen, you told me something. 10 years ago, you said if I wanted to be a writer, don't write movies. And he says, yeah, John, but it's such a relevant art form, isn't it? Why wouldn't you? And I'm like, wait a minute, 10 years I had this message in my head. And what I realize is when people ask me, what should I do to become a writer in film or whatever it is, I have to preface it with what worked for me is going to be different for you. This is what I did. And what Ray did was write short stories. And then it led him into film. So then it was like, okay, wow, big life lesson. But yeah, no, he was always very, very cool. And when I was on strike with the Writers Guild, I got pictures of him on the picket line, which was really fun. And I still cherish those. But I did find later, I was clearing out some old boxes and with my daughter, and I found, she says, what is this? And it's the letter from Ray Bradbury to my mother. And it says on it, no kidding, this is pre-computer, so he scratched stuff out and wrote in hand and then signed it, and it was all very cool. And it said, yeah, tell the Honorable young John Penney to come down, absolutely, I'll take him out, and I'll fill him with the worst advice I can possibly think of. Now I'm thinking, whoa, was that on purpose? I don't know. It was just very funny to find. See what your medal was. I know. Funny. It was just so bizarre. So, of course, I could say, did he give me bad advice? No, of course not. But it was really funny to find that old letter from him. Yeah, so that was a situation with me toward the end of my writing and producing career. In the beginning of the directing career was when I was doing this movie, and afterward, I was saying, well, with my manager, listen, I can screw up this movie just as good as the next guy. And so I went out on is this answering any questions?
Yes, all of them. We're doing great.
I'm just wandering on through my professional side. And so then I ended up going out on a pitch, right, where you tell your story, and the guy said, well, here's my idea that I want you to write. And he pitched me the idea, and I said, I didn't respond to it creatively. I didn't quite feel it was right for me. But we talked and talked and talked, and we got along so well. He says, well, John, do you have any ideas? And I said, I had just been driving to Las Vegas, and I saw the sign, Zizek's Road, and and I came up with this treatment.
By the way, Zizek's Road, is that how you pronounce it? or
Zizek's Road, Zizek's or Zizek's.
When I drove past that sign, I took a picture of it and I said, what happens when the DOT shows up drunk to work and they have to name that street? Because it's
ZZYX.
What the?
I changed it for my movie. I took the second Z out because the Zizek's bug, or the Zizek's bug, is a bug that can change its form. So if you've seen the movie, that will be a a hint into it.
I see.
Yeah.
So you're driving along.
So I'm driving along. I come up with this idea. And anyway, so I had come up with this thing just like a couple days before, this story I thought was really cool. And I told him that idea. And he said, well, let's do that movie. And I said, okay, but I got to direct it. This pause went on, right? So I'm like, oh, crap, very awkward moment. And then in my mind, it was like 30 seconds. It was probably like 2 seconds. And he goes, okay, you can direct it. So I directed it. And we had, what's her name?
Catherine.
Yeah, she came in later. We originally had a really good actress, Thora Birch. Do you know her?
Yeah, of course.
Thora Birch was involved for quite a while, actually, and got us up and running into pre-production. And her father, who was an adult film actor in previous life, was her manager. And he just felt very nervous that she was going into a movie without me being first-time director, and the guy opposite her was also not a known name at the time. And so she loved the project. We met a number of times, and finally she said, I'm not going to do it. I think her agent stepped in, the one who told Toby Hooper not to do Spider-Man or something. Anyway, I have my vendetta list I have to. Anyway, so Thora backed out, and then we constantly were hearing about Katherine Heigl. And at this time, this is before she had done, I think she did the pilot for Grey's Anatomy right after our movie. And so I'm like, who is this person who really aggressively pursuing the part, loved the script, wanted to do it. But we had open casting because we were desperate and we're in heavy pre-production. We're trying to get started. And I saw every young ingenue in Hollywood over a period of time. And Valerie McCaffrey, the casting director, amazing woman. She did Hard Candy and Babe, the movie Babe. So she brought in all these actresses, and I got to see them all. And it was a very sexualized role for a young woman. And so this young blonde, I have to say almost girl, comes in, and I felt very uncomfortable. And she leaves. And I said, yes, but she's too young. She says, okay, but mark my words, that young woman will be huge. Next thing I know, I'm watching ABBA's movie, the first one. Do you remember that one? Oh, the ABBA movie.
I never saw it.
With Meryl Streep. I don't know.
Oh, and the Mamma Mia.
Yeah, Mamma Mia. And the lead actress was this young blonde girl that is now my mind is escaping her name, but she's did huge. And I realized that casting directors can see what's coming up. Yeah, they really know.
Yeah.
So anyway, so we ended up with Katherine Heigl. She came in
instead of the Mamma Mia actress.
Because she was too young. Yeah.
This is a lot about you too, that you're like, oh, this movie has sexual undertones or overtones for that matter, and
there were no tones. It was
straight up
sexual.
Yeah. But that you found that
well, it's about listening to you have an instrument playing a part in front of you, and if that instrument doesn't play that, it doesn't work for that part. It's nothing wrong with that instrument. It's just not right for this part, and her vehicle or instrument was too young for the words she was saying. And I don't know, maybe it was just me, maybe it wasn't, I don't know. I just couldn't see it. It was it was going to be too much of a stretch, knowing I already had the guy opposite her. It would have been too old.
Yeah, because
it's like you're passing this weird point into creepiness.
Is that right, Vincent
Gallo?
Yeah, was he already cast?
Oh no, Grillo, Leo Grillo was his name.
Oh.
And then when we ended up with, what's his name? Sizemore, Tom Sizemore.
Tom Sizemore, that's
he was
what I was
also
thinking.
in the movie. So
I don't know why I thought that was Vince Gallo for some reason in my brain. I get those two mixed up sometimes, weirdly. Funny. Isn't that weird?
Yeah.
They have kind of a similar energy to me. Yeah. I don't know why.
So I'm trying to think what it was. What's his name? Sizemore. We originally had this guy from some TV actor who was really big at the time was going to play this part. It was about an abusive boyfriend.
Yeah.
And we couldn't get him, and it fell out because he was going to go direct his own movie. My name is Earl, that guy.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I forget his name.
Yeah, I know
so I had a great meeting with him. He was very excited about doing it, and then next thing I know, he's going off to direct a movie. And so I'm really close to shooting, and the casting agent, Valerie, says, well, what do you... I said, okay, listen, the whole part was based on a Tom Sizemore type guy. Okay.
It's so hot. I'm so sorry. Do you want us to open the door? Get some air in
let's
here?
get some air.
I'm so sorry. I know, it's
okay. It's me using up all the hot air.
Yeah, I had to figure that out. See, it changes the tone of the room. Mm-hmm. But that's okay. People will understand. No, it feels nice out there, though, doesn't it? Good.
I didn't want to be the one to say it because I didn't want to.
Well, I felt bad. I started watching you look like you were getting a little warm.
I don't want to break stride.
No, it's all good.
You can cut all this out. Or you'll probably leave it in. I don't know.
It doesn't matter. You know what? I think the human side of life is all good. It was getting warm in here for sure. It's weird. They built this as a walk-in closet.
Huh.
And
it's certainly big enough.
And I looked at it and I thought, oh, this would be great for a podcast room. I'll put all my books in here, and so it'll be a podcast room / library. And I realized in all the other closets in this house, there's air ducts that circulate air.
Oh, wow.
But not in this one. So this must have been an afterthought, is my guess.
Could be. Maybe they added it later, yeah.
Anyway.
How weird.
Sorry, I'm melting it.
No.
It's a lot better with the breeze. So they'll understand when the sound shifts a little bit. That's why, because we opened the door.
It's because we opened the door. Then you have to leave it in, see?
Yeah, that's right.
So then people will know. Anyway, Tom Sizemore. It was a funny story because we had cast him, and I said, well, it's based on a guy like Tom Sizemore. And so she said, well, we got to get this cast. Let's call him. And sure enough, he ends up in the movie. I said, okay, great, whatever. And the morning comes where he's going to shoot, because we started shooting in the desert. And I pulled onto the set, and the AD comes up to me and says, he says, John, I was watching CNN this morning, and Tom Sizemore was arrested again. I go, oh, crap, are you kidding? He's supposed to be here. And he goes, no, I haven't heard. We've been calling the agent. The agent hasn't returned. Pretty soon I go, well, I can't worry about this. So I go off to the set, and I'm working. And then next thing you know, I got, Tom Sizemore's here. He made it here. He's great. It's here. Now he's going to come up and talk to you. And I'm like, I'm in the middle of trying to do a scene, and it's in the desert, and it's very challenging. And I said, okay, great, send him up. So he comes up, and he says, I didn't do it, And I go, what? He says, no, this whole thing that she's accusing me of. And he starts launching in about him and the hooker woman, what is she? Heidi Fleiss.
Sex worker.
Yeah, Heidi Fleiss.
Yeah.
And so I'm going, whoa, okay, listen, I wasn't going to ask you about that. Meanwhile, in the back of your mind, you're always curious. But he had a new girl with him, young woman, and had great, no problem going on. He'll go back. So he was still using at that time, unfortunately. And it was a struggle for me as a first-time director. I had to isolate him in scenes and run long takes. And
because of lines, or
he would get one line right,
because he was doing lines
and
while
doing
trying
something
to do
else, and then he would say the next time. So I had to make sure I could get what I needed out of it. So that was a challenge, and it was a good thing to learn. But then when he finished the movie, he got clean. And I came down to the courthouse to be a witness. Was he clean from this time to this time? And it was when we were doing ADR, which is automatic dialogue replacement, which is where you're putting in lines later after the movie's done. And when I saw him doing that, he was totally clear-headed, sober as can be. After that, he got into some trouble with the fake penis. Do you remember this story? Mm-mm. He had he was being drug tested regularly. And so they make these, things that you can use that look like prosthetic penis. You pull out and you use with fresh urine and
clean urine. Sure.
Yeah, clean urine, and you give it to him. And he denies this. He says, "No, I never had that." Blah 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 blah. So, true story. I go to show up to say, yes, I'm going to swear that he was clean when I was doing ADR during this period of time. He was not using. He seemed very lucid. He was with it, no problem. I'll be a witness on that. I can't say anything about any other time, but I could say about that time. So I showed up. I never was called as a witness, but we had a lunch break, and I go into to go to the bathroom during lunch break, and he goes, John, look at this. And I look down. He takes out a prosthetic penis, and I'm. This is weird on a lot of levels, but he started laughing. He says, can you believe this thing works, So then I'm like, now I'm armed with this, bit of information I don't really want to know. And luckily, I was never on the stand, so it worked out. Yeah, but it was odd.
Wow.
It was the day Tom Sizemore showed me his fake penis.
Yeah.
Very odd.
Well, who doesn't have one of those, really?
Yeah, well, in one form or another, right? But anyway, so that movie, finished that movie, and
it has an interesting distinction.
Amazing stuff happened after that. So we finished the movie, and Katherine Heigl blew up. I mean, she was huge. And we had an enormous amount of options to go out with it. But prior to that, what happened was we immediately, before she blew up, we had a distributor called Regent Entertainment. And Regent Entertainment loved the film, was very supportive of it, but we hadn't done any domestic deals, which means the U.S. yet. So this was just foreign. And they were also going to be doing domestic. And we had filmed the movie under something called a low-budget SAG agreement, in which which means your movie has to play in a theater, and to qualify, it can't go straight to video or it can't go straight to TV. It has to go into a movie theater. So they said, we have theaters in Texas. Give us a disc. So we burned them a disc and they threw it into a theater in the afternoon.
Not even on film.
It was on a disc. It was in a very small theater, and it stuck there for some reason. They put it on like at 2:00 in the afternoon, and our hair and makeup woman lived in Texas, and she goes, I'll go see it. So she went and bought tickets with her friend. And the way theaters work is at the end of the week, you do a box office report. And so this, I guess, a minimum wage person sat there and wrote every movie that was playing in the screen and the dollar amount. Well, we had $30 because 3 people, it was never advertised, and it satisfies our SAG requirement. Next thing you know, I'm up in Carmel doing wine stuff. I get a call from my editor, and he says, "Oh my God, John, have you read, Hollywood Reporter?" I go, "No, what are you talking about?" He says, "Zizek's Road is the lowest grossing movie in U.S. box office history." And I go, "What? It's never been in a theater yet. What are you talking about?" I'm like, Time magazine picked up on it. It went all over. Then the people got into a fight because Variety didn't credit the online source that broke the story. So there was a whole fight between Variety and this online fan site or whatever it was. And then finally there was so much craziness about this weird movie. And I'm like, this is a horrible thing because no one knows the true story. They think, and it's a great headline, right? So
$30.
I know, $30. And so finally, Entertainment Weekly contacted me and they said, "John, we really want to do a story." I said, "Absolutely, come out. I'd be thrilled to finally tell what caused this." And so the guy key interviewed all these different people, and he came to the house, did a long interview with him. He was great. They did this beautiful big article with all these pictures, and of course the $30 grossing movie was the headline because that was great. And then that sort of blew over. And then, like I say, she got really huge. And then we had a deal with New Line Cinema that was going to do a big DVD release. But the producer backed out at that point, sadly, because he didn't like the terms of the deal. So I think in 2015, 16, I got a call from Forbes magazine. Yes. They said, "So we want to know what happened to you after directing the lowest budget grossing movie in U.S. history." And I said, "Well, actually," they said, "But we need to know what's going on." I go, so I just told them the truth, and they weren't interested in that. They didn't want to tell the story of it. I said, "Actually, I did another couple movies after that. I've been writing, I've been producing, but it didn't really, because everyone in the film business understands what that was. But it still comes up. And once it popped up, it used to pop up a lot in the LA Times, so much that I got pissed off at the guy who kept saying, "Hey, this movie did really bad, but not as bad as Zizek's Road." And so I called this guy. I said, "You realize that wasn't a real screen?" He said, "John." I go, "Yeah." He goes, "Did somebody pay that at the box office?" And I said, "Yes, but you see, so $30 is what came into the box office." I said, "Yes, but," and they don't like that because it's not fun for the story to know what the truth is. Yeah, so it's pretty funny, and that to this day, it's just hard to explain, but it's not something, I mean, it was really scary to go through because I'm like, holy shit, it's like when you see a story go so big, that's not really telling what's the truth is, or is it what I perceive as the truth. I just feel like, wow, this is scary. It makes you feel really anxious. And at that point, I had to become very proactive in social media and very proactive with the media, doing interviews. And I did radio interviews and TV interviews and the Entertainment Weekly interview just to try to get the real story out there, which was very funny. But don't call me defensive.
When did you start teaching at the Film Institute?
LA Film School. After I came back from, I came back from shooting a movie in Thailand, and what do we call this? The Great Recession. It really was a depression, but we're calling it the Great Recession. Hollywood was dead. I mean, it was like no one, the whole end of the business that I was working in, which is sort of mid-budget movies that have action and a decent cast, there was no market for that because people were making movies for $100,000 on their iPhone. And so everything was really quiet. And I started connecting back with Brian Usna, who I did Return of the Living Dead. And he had produced Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, and you met Brian, right? Mm-hmm. Honey, I met
that was who was throwing the Christmas party.
Yeah, Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, and Reanimator, notably.
I saw Reanimator and Basket Case in the same night with my then boyfriend Jeff. Cool. At our apartment.
Oh, really?
In Washington State. Yeah, we watched that.
That's a good double feature.
And I think we got really stoned and watched it.
That probably makes it great.
Basket Case being very disturbing.
Yeah.
But anyway,
I don't know about Basket Case.
Reanimator has the hand with the
hand. Yeah. Well, no, that's Bride of Reanimator.
Oh, okay.
Which Brian directed. Reanimator, the first one has the head giving head.
I know we saw
headless
that.
Corpse.
Yeah, I know we saw that one. But I mean, it's a long time ago. And
I didn't mean to thrust a corpse at you.
No, you're not the first. Right. You won't be the last.
Anyway,
I run in some weird crowds.
Yeah, I guess. So Brian and I connected, and we started developing and working on a lot of stuff. And I spent the last few years writing and teeing up a couple projects that I'm going to direct. Weirdly enough, and during this time, I started teaching as an adjunct professor at the LA Film School in writing and directing. During this time, of course, I'm developing a lot of projects, and I have a couple things that I want to direct next. And I kind of did this thing in my head where I said, I'm kind of a little bit burned out on writing scripts for other people, and now that I'm directing, I want to do it where the things that I'm writing are the things I want to direct. And if somebody wants to hire me, I'll write for them, of course, and I'll do an amazing job because I own everything. I always find something that I can hold on to and that connects with me anytime I'm going to write something. But things were so quiet that I just produced a lot of spec stuff. And among them, weirdly enough, coming full circle, were 2 novels. Right, the medium I thought I would never want to do. And what I did was, one of them is called Truck Stop, and the other one is called Killing Time. Truck Stop was the first one. And of course, the idea here is that I have a script ready to go for both of these. So it was about creating a more of a presence for these ideas. And so I said, okay, my friend Steve Carpenter at the time had been doing this thing on Amazon, and his book got him $250,000. I mean, it was huge.
Any relation to John Carpenter?
No, not Steve Carpenter. I'd known him for years. He ended up creating the show Grimm on NBC later.
Sure.
Anyway, so Steve says, John, you got to do this, man. You go in there, you write your novels, you put them up in the ebook, and people freaking. And I did it, and I wrote my first novel with that plan in mind. I put it up, and there was a thing you can do where you give it away for free, and it shoots up if it's popular, and then you shut off the freeze and you drift down with the buys. I don't know if that makes sense.
Sure it does.
But so I said, well, what do you do? And you put in all these keywords. And he says, yeah, my work is a lot, and I don't want to compare myself to him, but you could say it's in the wheelhouse of like a Stephen King. Mm-hmm. So one of the keywords I put was Stephen King. And of course, my book just shot up, and it did crazy well. I mean, it just was, this truck stop did really, really well. And
this was on Amazon?
Yeah, on Amazon ebooks. Yeah, it was crazy. It was a period of time when they were starving. They were selling tons of ebooks, and people were starving for stuff. And my book went all over the place. I had I think it was 15,000 downloads, and it was enormous. And it went on to do 16, 17, 18,000 downloads, which was big for them. So I said, this novel writing is pretty cool. I like it. And I had such a great time because I could go places that I can't go with a screenplay. And I just really like doing it. So I said, okay, here's another idea that I also have a script for. I'm going to write the novel here. And so that was Killing Time. And that one did about half as well as Truck Stop because that whole market started clamping down. It was a free-for-all for a while there. And but the books did really well. If you go on Amazon, you'll find them in the ebook section. The first one, Truck Stop, got really good reviews from readers, which was really special. And then there's a company called Encyclopocalypse Publishing.
That's a mouthful.
I know. It's a guy, Mark, who used to work for Clive Barker, started this Audible company. And I just sort of recently finished the Audible book of Truck Stop.
That you yourself did?
I read it myself. So I was given a choice.
A lot of work, isn't it?
Oh my God, it was so much work. I was given a choice of me doing it or they'll bring in an actor to do it. And I said, I'm just going to try it. And they conned me into it, much like this podcast. No, if it doesn't go well, we'll just stop. Don't worry about it. So he says, well, if it doesn't go well, we'll just stop. Don't worry about it. And not that you said that. I'm just...
No, I would never.
No, of course.
I make you suffer through it.
Yeah,
Good or bad.
So he said, well, let's just try it with you reading this. And I was very nervous, but then I felt, well, why not? Much like the directing thing, I can screw it up as good as the next guy. So I got in there and it ended up, he was really supportive and encouraged me and I got the whole thing done. And so it's really fun to have an Audible out.
Are you going to make a movie out of it?
That one is one of them, yeah. It's right now in Asia. It has a different title, oddly enough, for the content, for the location where it's being filmed. And the second movie as well, we've got interest on both of them. I just got a text from this packaging agent who's doing the second book, Killing Time. So who knew that novels would be an important thing to add to the journey at this point, which I vowed I would never do. I hated seeing all these writers silently sipping wine all day and writing. It's like, now, what do I do?
Yeah, well.
You can run, but you can't hide.
That's right. That's the path.
Yeah.
I love it. This is probably a question you get asked all the time, especially by your students. All-time favorite top 3 horror film?
Jaws, certainly, is a monster movie. Definitely Exorcist, of course. And then, I know that everyone says this, but you have to look at what connects with you. There was a movie called The Shuttered Room, based on an H.P. Lovecraft story. And I was a little kid, and it scared the shit out of me. And it was weirdly enough, about a family member who was this warped, disturbed sister who was chained in the attic, who creeps down and kills people. So nothing makes me more fearful than family. I mean, that's in my DNA. And then when you combine it with it, so it really had this huge impression on me, this creepy movie. So that has got to be up there in terms of one of them. But it's a bit obscure. I did run into some horror filmmakers who said, "Oh yeah, Shuttered Room," and he brought a disc over and we watched it at home. I'm going, "Oh my God."
Did it still scare you?
No, but that's okay.
But it's childhood memory.
So that would definitely be in that mix somehow. And I love, I think Nightmare on Elm Street is certainly up there. I love inventive horror, and I like blending genres a little bit too, which is a lot of what I've done.
Did you see the movie The Cabin? Was it The Cabin in the Woods? Yeah. Did you enjoy that?
So now I think I was a little too old for that movie because I said, oh no, we did this movie, The Dormant Drip Blood. We made this movie in the 80s.
What was it called?
The Dormant Drip Blood. The first movie I was an editor on.
Oh, that one. Okay. Yeah. And that was the same idea.
Well, it's body count movie, yeah, of course. People, this one had the sickness thing.
Maybe I'm confusing the titles. What is the movie that is an homage?
Oh, no, that's Cabin in the Woods. You're right. No, it's not Cabin in the Woods.
Which is the one that's the homage movie that has all the different tropes.
No, that one I did like.
Yeah,
now you got me confused.
What is it called? I thought it was
which was Cabin?
Last Cabin on the Left? No.
Something. Well, I'm trying to think of the one. Cabin Fever was the one I was thinking of. Okay. I'm sorry. Cabin Fever. You had it right.
So it's the Cabin in the Woods or the...
Cabin in the Woods is the homage.
Yes.
I was thinking of Cabin Fever by, what's his name?
Good old what's his name?
Yeah, the director.
Okay.
No, I got it right.
The homage.
Yeah, and I liked it very much. It was a lot of fun.
I thought it was fun. Did Joss Whedon do that one?
I think so, yeah.
I love him.
The last movie I produced is a movie that's out now. You can rent it anywhere that movies are rentable to stream or buy, called Reborn. It's a movie I produced. And that one is also sort of an homage to 80s horror movies. It's kind of like Carrie meets Firestarter, about a young 16-year-old girl who has the ability to manipulate electricity. And she's going on a mission to find her mother who left her for a stillborn when she was born. Once again, I'm working through...
family stuff. If a student came up to you, or let's say somebody reaches out to you and says, Mr. Penney, I'm going to be in town. Let's go have lunch, the way Ray Bradbury did for you. Of
course.
What would be your advice?
I would say definitely. I mean, I get that a lot.
Because you teach, of course, you probably get it all the time.
The students,
I mean,
but I usually do that in a classroom setting. It's interesting. I'm happy to... people that are enthusiastic about what I do, I'm always enthusiastic to meet. There are times when it gets... I don't mean to complain. This is a terrible thing to say, but a lot of times I'll go to events where I'm the one that everyone wants something from. And then I realize, is this fun? I want to go to a place where they can make my dreams come true. You know what I mean?
I do know what you mean.
And it gets kind of a little awkward. Like if somebody was interested in writing music, they're coming to you. So do you think you can show this to so-and-so? Do you think you can take this to Nashville? Do you think you can... That, as you understand, so you're nodding.
I do understand exactly what you're saying.
So I feel a little like that happens a lot. And it's hard for me to... if somebody wrote the right kind of letter to me and said, I would love to...
What would be the advice?
The advice would be, I can tell you what I did. And what I did when I was coming up, they were selling and buying spec scripts. And movies were really expensive to make. Millions, literally millions. And so if you want a career in this thing, the first thing you do is do your gut check, which is ask yourself, what was the last movie you paid $12 to see? Right? So if one person says, oh, are you kidding? It was the Star Wars movie. I go, okay. Well, your passion happens to intersect very nicely with what is the marketplace. Somebody says to me, the last movie was an art house made by a guy. You would never have heard of him, but he works in New York. And then I said, wonderful. That's what you should pursue because that's what you're aspiring to do. But just keep in mind, the marketplace may not be able to find you in doing it that way. So and then people try to backpedal. Oh, no, but I'm going to just write this. I know I'm going to write this horror movie because I know I can sell it, and I know it's going to be really good, and it's going to be too easy. Sorry, I don't want to knock that over. And then I say, but you know how fast you'll be found out because there are people like me that really love genre movies and science fiction and fantasy, and I know when somebody's phoning it in because I work really hard trying to make it work. And to make it work, it takes a lot of effort and commitment. And somebody who's really inspired by something else, who's just going to do this to get into the industry, I would say, don't waste your time. Don't ruin your life. The best thing that could happen is you get stuck in doing something you don't want to do. And the worst thing is that you don't succeed at what you were selling out to do and you didn't pursue what you really wanted to pursue. So I think that's really important, number one. And number two, I would tell them what I did, but I would say now, how do you work creatively? For me, it was always the word. It was always writing, just family trade, whatever it was. But it could be that you pick up a camera and you use your camera to start, and the next thing you know, you plug in a card, a chip, and you're shooting a movie. Make a feature, make a movie, make a short. I don't know. There's so many options now that I think that it's not. You'd have to be very similar to me, in which my home base, my primary source of creativity is the written word. That's always where I'm comfortable and safe and happy, is I can always go back. Things aren't going great on the directing front. I go back to my, safe place and I write, which always wasn't a safe place, by the way. It was, I don't know if you've been through this or not as a creative person, but there's a moment when you, at least in my case, I said, this is what I'm really going to do. I'm going to be a writer, and I'm going to write scripts, and I'm going to keep, I have no backup plan, and I didn't, and I'm just going to do this. And every money I make doing assistant directing on a music video, and I did a whole bunch of them in the night when I wasn't working. A lot of big names, Jefferson Starship, I think it was called, Jefferson Starship at that time, or they went back to Airplane, I think. And, the Lily of the Canyon, what's her name? Boy, I'm terrible with names today. Anyway, so I did a bunch of videos, but everything I did, I took that money and I said, well, this will give me longer. I can keep writing my scripts. That's all I knew it was for. Mm-hmm. And I was so singularly focused that there was no other choice for me. And
that is the poison of the creative. Once it's in your bloodstream, you just there's no antidote.
And so I that's why I come full circle and I say, okay, Mom, I get it. Although she's not really my mom, she made that clear. But my biological mother, I say I can see where that drive comes from because I've lived it. But it's hard because the first step that you just make that big decision, Ray Bradbury's words come back in my head. My parents' words come back in my head. Ray saying, if you don't write every day, you're not a writer. Literally, that's what he advised me. So he says, John, it doesn't matter. Whatever you do, just write something that day. If you don't call yourself a writer. So I got that burden. I've got a burden of all these things growing up from a divorced family where my father is telling me, don't be a writer because they're crazy, fucked up people who are drunk all the time and have no sort of boundaries. And that was a tough one because I realized the hardest thing for me, I had to turn inward and try to solve some of this. It was almost like I was holding myself back. And one of the things I had to do was go talk to my father. Luckily, he was alive. And I said, listen, I'm really struggling here. I had just sold a script to Warner Brothers. And I was struggling with this, this weird shit was coming up in my head. And I didn't know, what the fuck was this about? This is what I've dreamed about doing. I got this thing. If I don't do anything else, I'm thrilled. I said, listen, you always said, the writing business with you, this. And he says, John, whatever you do, don't ever stop writing. And he sort of at that moment let me out of jail. And he says, no, it was something he had said in the anger of this divorce, right? And he painted writers with a broad brush. But it took me having to actually ask him that question to let myself out of jail. And once I did, I was able to take off. It was really powerful what happens with these little messages you get as children. But it was a big moment. And I realized it wasn't about connecting outside, it was about connecting inside. I don't look outside to find some sort of emotional truth. I look inside. And when you do that, you look at yourself in a way that's can be very troubling sometimes. I don't know if you're feeling what I'm saying or not.
100%. But, and no one gets to write your story but you, but many people will try. Mm-hmm. They pick up the pen constantly and tell you what you should or shouldn't be doing with your own life, your soul, your mind, your heart. Yeah. And most of the time, unfortunately, we believe them. Right. Because we think maybe they're in a position of power, or we love them, or we hate them, or whatever it is. And so, I totally get what you're saying.
Yeah, it was a big moment. Yeah, it was. And then you get validated occasionally never from my mother, of course, but the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences. I have a script in their permanent collection now, which was very cool.
Which one?
Return of the Living Dead 3.
Oh, yeah, I figured that was the one.
Yeah, it was a part of a series. You get a letter. I saved the letter. It says, hey, this is of historic significance. I go, whoa, it's historic significance.
Incredible.
It's awesome. So I cheated. I took my original draft and I took the production draft, and I made a third draft that read so sweet. It was like polished, and it had everything from the production draft in it, so whatever.
Very cool.
They probably wanted the other raw version, but that was fun. But the last time this is the old thing about, hey, Mom, look what I'm doing. They don't care. One of the last movies when she was alive that she saw was this movie from Hungary, which we shot in the winter, and it's a gorgeous looking movie. Beautiful movie. The cinematography is absolutely stunning. And all she said was, of all the movies you've done, this one looks beautiful. That was all I got.
Lovely backhanded compliment.
Exactly.
Only a mother could give.
Right. So, I chuckle now. I don't, my wife doesn't read anything I write, doesn't see my movies, and I don't blame her for that. It's just she's not sort of, into that world. And she came about it by her own experience. I dragged her to Cannes one year where Return 3 was playing, and she didn't want to watch it, and it was a horrible experience for her. She's
not into horror films.
No.
One of my friends, Chad Kinkle, who's delightful and wonderful, and he and his wife Amy, they live in Nashville. Chad is an incredible writer. In fact, on the shelf right here is one of his stories.
Oh, wow, look at that.
Yeah, I have it in its plastic. Shout out to Chad Kinkle, the Hart brothers. They were considered one of the first serial killers in the nation. They were actually cousins. So he did this graphic novel about it, but he did a movie called Jugface.
Huh.
Did you know that one?
No, I don't know.
And he won the Grand Slam at some...
Slam Dance?
Is that what it's called?
I don't know.
It's the Grand Slam Film Festival thing, and he won the grand prize overall and in horror, and he did, it was really great. His wife does not like horror movies, when I was in Nashville, he was my horror movie buddy. We would go watch horror movies because she didn't want to go see anything. And that was great. Well,
it is what it is, but for me, it's been a great ride. I have no complaints. I know that I'm in a place in my career now where I'm not the new young kid coming up anymore, which is wonderful on one hand, and on the other hand, it's kind of like, wow, I could have done that. But you start seeing things so differently.
Well, it must be neat watching the kids coming up.
Yeah, I really love that. I really do, and especially when you find the one or two or three that actually they say, wow, they get it. And it's the most fun, because the thing I'm doing at the film school is I'm teaching thesis film writing and development. So I'm developing their thesis scripts with them, and we workshop them with actors like Chris and
our mutual friend.
Yeah, and I just have a lot of fun doing it. I really, really, and they treat me so well at that school. They're just the nicest. I mean, Charlie, who runs a school, is the best, and has I was hired there before he was the head of the school by the previous guy, and basically I walked in and they looked at my credits and said, can you start? And I said, okay.
Wonderful.
I know.
Wonderful.
But now it's become a different kind of place. It's part of Full Sail out of
really?
Florida. Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
So now it's a real school. And we have bachelor's and AA's associate arts degrees there now. Right. But I'm dealing with just the bachelor's at this point, which is a small group, and they've made it pretty much through the program, and now we're doing their thesis with them, which I really love.
It's exciting.
Yeah.
That means that you are your fingerprint is on all the things that will come.
God help them. If it's like we're Ray Bradbury, I'll just say, I'm glad I could give you some bad advice. No, I'm kidding. No, I always love it. But the thing that's fun is I don't even look at them as students. I just connect on the story level. It's just like suddenly I'm in a writer's room. Okay, what's going on with this script? Oh, I see what's happening. Well, you know what? Why don't you try this, or why don't you try that? I have a mind that works like a puzzle fixer when it comes to stories. I don't know how else to say it. It's like I see them all. I see the whole story in my head, and I can see visually when I picture everything as I'm reading it. So I keep that in my mind, and I can see where things, how I'm feeling as well. I keep checking and I monitor. Am I bored? Am I still engaged? Am I, and if I start losing interest, I can start seeing the choices that were made that may have brought it that way.
Are your students specific to the horror genre or all across the board?
No, they're all across the board, which is a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But the ones that are horror
exciting.
fans are thrilled to have me, which is great.
I bet.
Yeah, I love doing that.
How can people find you?
Besides
your IMDb, obviously.
You can do
and
that.
Penny with an E.
Yeah, you can do Instagram, John Penney filmmaker.
And Penny is N-N-E-Y.
E-Y.
Yeah.
Instagram for sure. I'm into Facebook still, so definitely Facebook. And
and I'll put links on Hey Human Podcast website.
Oh, that would be great because that's sort of the old school way.
Yeah.
But I find people that if a lot of students will now do that, and I keep things in my Facebook are things that are stuff that we're up to that people find interesting. Mm-hmm. I have it all inverted. It's supposed to be Instagram that does that and Facebook that does.
That's okay. And they can find you through the school too, I suppose.
Los Angeles Film School, of course. Yeah. And it's a fun school. We have a great time there. And
you throw a wonderful Christmas party.
Great Christmas
Holy
party.
moly.
They really do appreciate their employees. They treat us really well.
That was outstanding.
Yeah, it was really great. No. And they just had yesterday, they just had all the Oscar-nominated screenwriters.
I got invited there, but I was already committed to a very cool improv puppet show at the Henson.
Oh,
that
sounds even
so
better.
Neat. Yeah, but
you could have they could have been the same show. You just
I know, right? Puppets doing
puppet screenwriters. No, but that was at the LA Film School.
Yeah,
they put that together.
I would have loved to.
So the students, I let my students go a little early so they could get in line.
So wonderful. Yeah, this town. Sorry, but sorry, not sorry. This town is the bomb. I love it.
Oh, you do? I thought you were going to prepare me for. I hate it here. It's so shallow. It's Nashville with a tan.
No. I have not found it to be shallow at all. In fact, the opposite. I think it's a deep town. It's creative and fascinating, and I have met so many tribe here, yourself included, where I look at a person that I'm meeting for the first time and I say, there you are. And it's wonderful. Yeah. I really love it.
Well, you make me talk about things that I normally don't talk about with everyone. So there's a comfortability factor, definitely.
Yeah, I've been told that you're not.
It's scary how you get people to talk. You're very good at it.
Yay, I'm so glad.
You're very good at it.
John Penney, thank you for being on Hey Human. Thank you for bringing your delicious wine.
Cheers.
Cheers.
That's the glasses going together.
Beautiful.
But thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Bye, everybody. Thanks for listening. Bye. Rate and review Hey Human on iTunes or wherever you listen to your podcast. Thank you so much and take care. Bye.